Right, just looking at the remaining plastic parts to put on here, and we have what is like a loud hailer system that gets fitted into here. The kit part's pretty good, so it just needs cleaning up and fitting in. And then we've got this little recess here, and this part goes in. Only it shouldn't be there. Don't know what it is, but there shouldn't be anything there at all, so actually I need to fill that and smooth that off, which I hadn't spotted before. So just the loud hailer to go in. You can see we've put the rest of the eyebrows on, so it's just build the cage on this side, and then up to there we're pretty good. We've got the photo etch to put on here, and then there's some trunking missing here, which I think we'll probably make up as well. So still more to do here, so I'm going to carry on, and I'll come back to you when I've got something of interest. So we've got the covered vents to put in this section here. There's a couple of errors here. Both Trumpeter and the MK1 set have got the incorrect sizes. So they have 4 smaller ones and then 1 larger one, and it should be a larger one at each end, 3 smaller ones in the middle. So that's what I'm going to do. Also, there is a bit of deck missing. So there should be a little overhang there, which I'm going to attempt to put in. That gets painted in the metal colour anyway, so it's treated as part of the metalwork, not part of the deck, because it's like a rain cover. So it's not going to make any difference to the wood deck that we'll ultimately be putting in place. I just want to put these in next job. So I'm going to start with one of the larger ones. So just a dab of medium CA, and we'll put that one in at the front there. Just make sure it's straight. There we go, that's the first one on. And we've got these smaller ones to put in. One. 2. On the other side, there's a different arrangement, and you've not got as many. In fact, you've just got 2. And then we've got this last one to put in. There we go, that's what it should look like. So we've just got a little bit of plastic card to put in, which is about as deep as the larger covers. So let's have a look at that next. And then we've got some trunking to put in here. Actually, skipping ahead in the instructions, the trunking is actually included. It gets put in much later on as a deck fitting after this is installed. So we can leave it for now and just carry on. So that's really good. So we've got some more hand irons to put in here, and a little bit more cabling to go across there. So we can do that next. So I'll probably do that off camera. Then we can fit the deck and mask it off, ready for painting. I think that's probably the next thing to do. So yeah, let's have a look at that. So I'll carry on and then I'll come back to you when I'm ready to fit the deck. So I'm just using a strip of plastic card to do this bit of deck. Well, I guess it's just a rain cover really. Let's just mark that out. And cut that off. Then we just want to round the outside corners a little. Okay, and we should be able to just fit that into place now. Above there like that. That looks good. There we go. There, that's perfect. Brilliant. Right, happy with that. Right, I will crack on and come back to you in a moment. Okay, so as I've said before, we have a problem with this deck. And I've already removed bulkheads, but there is multiple problems with it. It is wrong in so many ways. What we're actually trying to achieve is this. So you can see that the deck is going right the way back to the bulkhead, so that's to the end of this raised bit of deck. So instead of having a step like we have currently, step down, that needs to go right to the end. And also the deck is completely level. So it needs to be raised here and brought up. The problem is we've got steel deck, which is correct for replacing the wood deck, but it's been cut to fit the parts that are wrong. So it's not really usable. It's too short and it's been cut around bulkheads that have now been removed. So I can't really use it. So that gives me a problem. How do I get a steel deck? I've got two options really. I can either put completely flat deck in and ignore the fact that there's no texturing and paint it, and we might well get away with it. Or I can find a source of steel deck. So I've had a look in my stash of photo etch and there's nothing suitable. But we do have steel deck supplied in the MK1 set, which is for this area here. And I have to be honest, there is nothing wrong with the steel deck supplied on the model. It's nicely textured, it's where it should be, with the exception of this area here, which has a wooden section of deck, which is incorrect. So I don't know whether that's correct for Gneisenau or not, but this should be steel deck. But most of it gets covered up by this disc. So there's only a small section, they've done steel deck correctly at the front, so there's only a small section either side of the disc, which is almost not visible. Now we do have to remove these because these have been put on as splinter shields and there should be railings, and we've got railings in the MK1 set. But I don't think I actually need all of this steel deck, which would be a pain to put down. You're going to have to do it with an epoxy resin glue. You can't, you can't do CA with things this big. They don't stay down. You've got to take the spring out. There's all sorts of issues with putting these decks down. Plus you've got to sand everything off. It's a huge amount of work for not really much gain. Now I reckon at the thinnest point here we can cut the deck, cut this little section out and use that to cover up the wooden deck that might be visible, especially as we're putting railings in, and just snip that off, and then the rest of this is pretty much free. So with that being the case, that means I've got steel deck I can use in this area here. So that is my plan, and we have to start by getting a plastic deck in there that is fitting and is correct. So we're going to cut a thin piece of deck to fit, and then we're going to put some support underneath and build it up so we can lay it on the top, and then when we're happy that that all sits flat, we can use that as a template to cut the steel deck out, is the plan. So let's see how we get on. Well, quite some time has passed and I have managed to make a little plastic deck template that fits nicely into our spot there where this goes. And so what my plan is now is to use that as a template to cut out a couple of sections of steel deck, which we can get out of one piece of material. I think shouldn't be a problem, so that we have, and then we can test fit those and file them down so that they fit. But we also need to extend this section here and put a little step in. So what I'm planning on doing is using a little strip of plastic rod here to put the step in at the back. So we're going to square that up and cut that off. So I can do that now while you're watching. So we'll just square it off with a file. Like so. And then using my knife we can mark out where we're cutting. Okay, so we should be able to fit that. We might need to sand it a little bit possibly. Yeah, we didn't quite cut it completely straight, so there we go. And that is actually slightly, ever so slightly lower. Yeah, there is a small step there, but it is very, very tiny. In fact, I imagine if I get a strip of this, yeah, that would bring it flat. So what we can do is we'll cut another one to length. So we'll use it as a template for getting the same length. And we'll just test fit that on the other side. Yeah, that fits okay. So now we can get a little bit of this card, put the two parts on, and what we'll do is glue them in. And then we can cut them out and we'll automatically have the right bit of right height. So just using some liquid poly here, put plenty on. There we go, that'll do. In fact, that might be a bit too much, so we'll take a little bit out. So we'll just let that dry, and we've now got that step level with that. We need to have a bit of card that is the right thickness to level that up next, and then we need to look at these bulkheads, because we've got doors to put in and bulkheads to restore. So what I will do is find a bit of card that's the right thickness, and what if we see if we can measure that. It's just a fraction under 1.5 millimeters. So I'll see if I've got some plastic card thick enough. I have always keep a little folder full of plastic sheet, and there we go, we've got some at 1.5, so we might be able to cut a strip off that and that'll be good enough. So what I'll do is I'll get a little pair of scissors, that'll be plenty. So I'll cut a square of that out. And the first thing we want to check is it going to do the job? Yeah, perfect. Yeah, that's really good. So that's handy. So that lip is 1.5 millimeters exactly, and we need it to go the full length across there, like so. So what's our width? Let's just see. We are at 1, 2, 3.5, and then we'll have to do a bit of sanding back. So if we do 3.5, is that right? 3.5, or is it 2.5? 1, 2, no, 3.5. Didn't look like it was that big, but there you go. So that's 2, 3.5. So that'll make it just over. We don't need to worry too much because we want to sand it flush, and then we'll have to test fit that part. So three and a half there. Get my right knife. We'll just score that. Once you've gone over it a few times, the blade should stay on track. Just don't push too hard, because with a knife you can always cut a new route, and then once you're about halfway through you can just snap it off. So that's not particularly square, but we've got a flat edge because I used the flat edge. So if we do another section from there, that should be about right. And then of course remember that we are going to have steel deck going on top of that, so any little imperfections will get hidden and we'll tidy up once we've got the steel deck in place. Okay, so let's just have a look at that. Yeah, so that one's cutting down a little bit. Right, we're not far off now, so what we can do is use a 220 fairly coarse file, take that back a little bit. There we go, that's not bad, so square that end up. There, and we're okay. So now we'll just use, this is a 400, so a lot less aggressive in terms of grit. Take any burrs off from the cutting process, making sure it's nice and flat. Do that all the way around so we've got a good fit. Okay, so that fits in there nicely. We've got that done. So I'll get the other one to fit, and then we can glue that in, trim it, cut out our steel decks, and I think we probably want to put some support in the middle here as well. So we could possibly, yeah, we could possibly run some of this on top of those points there, just to give a little bit of support. So I'll just see, yeah, it'd be a little bit low, so if we cut there, let's just cut that off. So if we put that in there and put a bit of the thin card on top, that'd be the right height, just like the other one. So if I cut another length of that, and then we've got a support there for the steel deck to go on top. So I think we have a plan now. So I'm gonna get all these bits sort of put together and then I'll come back to you. Right, I have my little support pieces in place. So we're gonna just, I'm using the quick drying extra thin here, and we're just gonna bob some of that on just to secure it in place for now. Didn't mean to move that, let's just put it back. There we go. It's a little tricky to get in, as you can see. If I hold it down, that's better. It reacts very quickly with the white plastic. There we go, and then we can glue into place these little blocks. And I can put some along the deck there. Okay, that's the basic bit in place. So I'll give that a moment to make it dry. I think we're going to have to put more glue on that. In fact, we'll change the glue to my Plastic Magic, which is stronger. I perhaps should have used that in the first place. There we go, that's gluing so well that it's stuck to my finger. There we go. And I think we're alright on that side, but we'll do it anyway. Belt and braces and all that. I'm a great believer in making sure that you've got things in place. There we go. Right, so the next thing to do is to install these extension pieces. So making sure the flat edge is against the raised deck lip there. There we go. And just put a bit underneath so that it makes contact. And if I put some there, it should capillary underneath. So that's that in. We're going to let that dry for an hour or two. And when it's really, really solid, we can then trim that back with either a chisel or a knife blade. And then just finish it off with a little bit of gentle sanding. So let's just... I haven't actually finished shaping this one, I don't think. No, got a little bit of trimming to do on that one. I'll do that off camera because you saw me do it on that one. So I'll come back to you in a sec when I've done this, and we'll have a look at cutting some steel deck to fit. Going to start by just roughing this out. So I've determined that we're going to need both sheets to make this steel deck, because I can't fit them in and keep the steel deck direction correct. So, but we have cut out the bit that we will use. So I think the next thing to do is just tidy this up a little bit, get rid of these little rough edges here and trim that down there, and then we'll tape up one end while we work on the other end to stop it slipping. Then we can move the tape up when we've got it in place. There we go. So easiest way of working with this is to go and do it with scissors and just follow the line. So very carefully. The edge is very thin, so it's not difficult to do. Just do a section at a time, nice and slowly. When you get to the plastic card, you can feel the resistance, so you know you're you're not overdoing the cut. We can tidy this up with a file very gently and carefully afterwards. Okay. The hardest bit is this little cutout here. And what I'm going to do is try and cut it with a blade, because I can't get in with the scissors. And then bend it back and forth till it sort of gives up. There we go. It's not quite down far enough, but again we can tidy that up. So we can carefully remove this tape. With the steel deck cut out, we can now test fit and make sure that it's okay. I have to be really careful. I've managed to knock off one of the photo etch cages that I put on the other day, and I've just loosened one. Yeah, just managed to knock the same one on the other side off, so I've got to be really careful. I perhaps should have done the deck before I put the more delicate structures on, but you live and learn. Hindsight's a wonderful thing and all that. So we're just seeing how it goes down. We need it to clearly to fit before we attempt gluing it in, and we seem to be okay, but a bit tight against there. So I think we're in this stage where you have to do a lot of test fitting, but this edge looks a little bit tight, so we'll go in with our file, and we'll have to be very careful not to bend it. I like diamond files for this type of work because unlike other files, like if I was using an ordinary flat file, it's got a set direction, whereas these diamond cut files, they don't really, so I can go like that and it'll work just as well. And I can take a very small amount off, and then we'll test fit again. And we're just going to completely repeat that until I'm happy that it goes in nice and evenly. The other thing I've done is I've gone around and just cleaned up the bulkheads a little bit, these splinter shields, and made sure they're nice and flush and there's no remaining plastic from when I removed them, because there were supports and all sorts in there. Right, so we seem to be quite a way out here. So we'll lift it off again. There's my tweezers. I'm not worrying too much about over long cuts. I'm trying not to do them. But when painted up, they'll sort of disappear. I'll just flatten that down again. Because it's so thin, there's a tendency for it to bend a little bit at the edges with the dry fitting, so you just have to keep flattening it out. It's not really doing any damage as long as you're gentle with it and you're not yanking it about. You should be okay. So we can see here now that it's fitting tight, but not here where we've got the bulkhead. We just need to thin that down a little bit, so it looks like there's a little strip needs to come off. So I'll use the bigger scissors for that, and we're taking just a fraction off all the way up. Let's try that now. It's a little tight on that edge there, I'm noticing now. So I'm just going to trim a tiny amount off that. Just make sure that's nice and square. Flatten it down again. I think we are nearly there. It's just a process of being patient, taking your time. There's a little bit that I need to do. So there's a little corner there, it was bending, I hadn't noticed, but when you, as you sort of slowly sort out the problems, and you then see another one, and eventually you'll have worked through them all, but you don't necessarily see them all right at the start. I mean, that's sort of dropping down now. I don't mind it being a little tight, that's not necessarily a bad thing. Right, so that's down there. Okay, not worried about that bit of deck showing because we've got to extend the bulkhead there anyway. So that for me is looking okay. Now while we've got that in, I can trim the overhang of the photo etch there. And we've got a little bit to take off that other end as well. Right, so it does go down, it's tight, but that's okay. We want it to stay down, so no real issues with that. So we can glue that in now. There we go. So just got a little bit to trim off this end here, which is why that's stuck down a little bit, because the cutting with the knife had just folded it slightly. And it was just catching in that corner there, and I can go in with my photo etch cutting blade and just tidy that corner up where I can't get in quite the same with my my scissors. Right, we are ready to go. So we've got to trim that back next and then trim the ends. So let's have a look at that. Okay, larger chisel for trimming this deck back now. I'm using the flat back of the chisel against the edge of the raised lip there to keep me nice and straight, and then you can see we're just rocking it down and using the top edge of the blade to gently trim it flush. Try not to lean it back because you could put a chamfer on if you're not careful. There we go. So that looks good. Some scrap there to get rid of. Okay, and then I'm just going to go in with a little bit of got a shaped emery board here. Just make sure that's nice and flush. And then we'll go back and there we go. That should paint up nicely. So we've still got work to do on the bulkheads, but we need to get the decks in next. So I'll trim up the other one, then we'll get the medium CA out and away we go. So we are going to put medium CA on every contact surface. Make sure we've got a really nice bond here because we've got equipment that we need to install. We don't want it springing up. I've not annealed this, so there is some spring in that photo etch, so it's really important that we have a really good bond. We push it down well, and that's why we've done the test fitting. The problem with annealing photo etch, especially when you've got large sections of deck like we have here, is it bends a lot and it takes the strength out. So because we've got gaps, we could end up misshaping the deck. So I didn't want to anneal it. If we were installing the full steel deck that we've taken the cut out of, then annealing it's a good way to go to make sure it stays down. But in this instance, I want the strength, so annealing it wasn't really an option. We'll put a little bit more adhesive down just on this edge here. We don't want anything still springing up really. Is that enough? Okay, here we go. The fact that it's gone down so well is testament to all the dry fitting that we did. Let's make sure we've got it nice and flush on all the edges. We can push it into shape now. Now you'll see it's overhanging. That's fine. We can trim that later to meet the edge, and we'll test fit with the bulkhead. There we go. That is on. Now I don't think there is a ladder at the back. I think there's a bulkhead at the back. Let me just have a look. Yeah, there's a bulkhead at the back. So yeah, I think we're okay. There's a platform that has a ladder, but that's sort of this area here. So I think we're okay. It's just a bulkhead with access doors in this set where we've got gaps as an access door. So yeah, all good, and that is looking a lot better. So we've just got to do some bulkhead work now. Okay, I have my part here, so we can use it for test fitting. I've cleaned it all up, and unfortunately I've looked at it as well. We've got some changes to do. So like all of this, everything you can see here is correct, but all of it needs changing because that angle's not right, the doors aren't in the right position, the scuttles aren't in the right position. It's all there, but it's just been sort of plopped in place rather than actually let's take a measurement and get it right. So every time you look at a part you think, oh, I've got to do some more work. But yeah, what we need to do is trim this deck back, and simply gonna do this. This is a wood carving knife. You'll see me use this a lot on the channel. It's my preferred scratch building knife, and the blade has a very steep shoulder, much more so than a number 11 blade, which has a more gradual shoulder. And so I really quite like this, and it's easier to sharpen, to resharpen the blade. So what we're going to do, because this is quite a thin piece of photo etch, it's like thick foil really, is we're just going to run the blade along the plastic edge, and then the filled in plastic edge that I've created, and trim this back. And I should, with a bit of luck, if we do it carefully and slowly, be able to do it in one action. There we go. We're off. Key is to make sure you keep the blade straight. There we go. And then I can go in with my file here and just smarten the edge up. And hopefully this will just plop into place now, like that. Brilliant. So with that in place, we can now do the bulkheads. So on the actual ship, the bulkhead is in line with this bulkhead, so it's sort of an extension. So what we can do is we can put some plastic card in that faces up this edge here, so we'll have a perfectly flat edge, so that'll be nice. It'll reface that and then build it up to the height of this. Now obviously this has been lowered because of the deck being dropped down incorrectly, so this is now too low, and it also has a little flare out, and that shouldn't be there either. So we need to remove that and then build it up to the same height as that, but keep the shape. And then so we'll have plastic card building up to there, and then we've got to build the bulkheads in here correctly as well. So we've got a little bit of work to sort that out. So that's the next thing we need to do. Yeah, and then we can have a look at doing these parts and getting them correct and check fitting them before we paint this and install it on the ship. And then what we'll do is we'll do all the work we need to do on this and the next bit, and we'll do it in sections, and the next bit will be all made perfect then this will get installed, and then the next bit that goes on the top will be sorted, and then that bit will go on, and we build it up that way. Is how we'll do this. But at each stage, once we paint this and we install it, we have more stuff to do. So we'll have the deck to add, and then maybe inclined ladders that come off and that sort of stuff. So it sort of mushrooms slowly. But there is so much to do, we need to stop talking and get on with it. I'm sure you're thinking the same. Okay, so going to attempt to remove this cleanly and preserve it so that we can adjust it higher up. Now if I look at this side on, this needs to be the same height as that, so we are, what are we? About 1 millimetre. Needs to be risen by about 1 millimetre. So it's going to be tricky, but it looks wrong as it is. So we need to get it to the same height as that, which will make it correct. So let's have a go. So I'm going to go in with my razor saw. I think is my best way forward, and try and take that back. So the shape of this, where's my pointy thing? Bear with me one sec. The shape of this is starting part of the way down, so we've got a solid bit of plastic to saw through, so it's thicker than you imagine, but we'll give it a go. I'm not sure this is the best saw for the job. Got a couple, well, 3 different saw blades out, all of which could do the job in theory. We'll see how we get on. So this is a Tamiya photo etched saw in the Tamiya saw holder. We'll see how this gets on. It might be too thin. Yeah, it's not cutting straight. So that means that this one probably won't be strong enough either. So the other thing I can do is use one of these GLC razor saw blades, but without the handle. See if that does a better job. That seems to be doing what we want. Well, we've managed to get that off in one piece, so I'm pleased about that. That's gone better than it may have done. Okay. I'm not sure how perfectly straight we've got it, but we can sort that out. So now we've got to think about cleaning this up. So we've got this edge on it that we need to take off. I think I'm best going in and getting the bulk of it off with this. and then so we've got a little imperfection here where we first tried using the Tamiya saw that wasn't up to the job. Otherwise we're okay. So if we put the piece in here to blank up first, that will give us a support then for this bit. So yeah, so we've just got to tidy up this corner here. Managing to break bits off. Should be all right now. Right, well, that's the reshaping done, ready for modification, so I guess we should get some plastic card out next. Thanks for watching. Please hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't done so. It's free, and that way you won't miss my first impressions, my tool reviews, my product reviews, and any of my builds. Including wooden model kits as well as plastic. It's all free, and if you'd like to support the channel, you can hit my PayPal link in the text below. Every pound goes straight into the channel to keep the cameras rolling and to do more fun stuff for you to watch.